With Jim Baxter in the Coon and Park Junior show like Raith Rovers, cosnig Jich Nochtig in Czech and call the Czech Nochtig in Illa, that took al Marvaina. Har Jim fatte feine gasse next Starks Park, a tashbenige doi cliche vrakal, vidig udit Jechluga.
We were playing at Tynecastle and he gets the ball and he comes right across the box, which is taboo, you don't do that, you clear your lines. He comes across the box and there's a Hearts player snapping at his heels, trying to win the ball off him. And he shouts, "Jimmy!" And I thought, oh Lord. And he back heels the ball. And I get out and lift the ball and he's still carrying over towards the shy line with this Hearts player still snapping at his heels, thinking that he's still got the ball.
I think he could have went into any team, put it that way. You know, he was that good a player. They would say, right, if you get the ball, look for Jimmy, get to Jimmy. If you look for him, he was there. And every time he was on his own. You know, and that gave him time to control the ball and go at people.
Ha putting to Jim Baxter of the Achian Raith Rovers a Gamna Bear, or Berlin, you list Sedavachel of a shotgun a club.
Certainly in the 1950s, which was the second golden era for Raith Rovers, throughout the 1950s, we were constantly in the top half of the table. Crowds would be anything between 12 to 20 odd thousand at Starks Park every week. We were for provincially, although we never won any trophies, we were a big team at that particular time.
Baxter for Raith.
Ar offatig as yn Roskillen Baxter y took a lw I chlybich yn asmua. The manager Ranger Scott Simon het ferf a cwmal sŵl ierydd. Agus as Joey game sorich ag Ibrox, rydyn a sŵas ingin, gyffemig at Baxter a hortig Glasgow.
One of my first games was against Raith Rovers at Ibrox. And Baxter was left half and I was inside right for the Rangers.
I think it was a week or something after they'd been got 7-1 with Celtic in the League Cup.
The first warning we got was Harold Davis behind me said, "You've got to stop this fella coming through so often," because he was coming past me and went to Harold Davis. I says, "Well, Harold, it's a very difficult thing to do because he's really a good player." And I said, "The two of us will have to try and stop him."
Da hwyl y ieddig y tyfystu castan y hwyrach hewnde Baxter cwysyn mewn cwrs le tasban y miafiliach. Gleir Raith Rovers 3 gaga, y chia tyrus y fad et bynig ag Ibrox fo fichyd y cead. A sŵl y falich fo hyla byth y nimish arach gytŵr. Get y fa ffolosiach gan chwlyd dynig gyda clws forst yn y ffefydd, ar y Baxter hen y ffach gyn driach gan y bol cosio idydd.
I'd never ever thought I'd be a professional footballer. I really wasn't. Until I started playing with Raith Rovers, and I remember Willie McNaught, I didn't even want to sing for Rangers. I really didn't. And Willie McNaught drew me aside and says, "You don't want," he says, "footballers are the same." I says, "I've got all my pals are here, I'm happy here." He says, "Jim, footballers are the same all over."
Chwyd a enig ydy fad cwtioch, sy'n mwyn gyda clis lan y fechadach gyfas y nwy ag Rangers.
And you used to go doing training now with the motorbike, and you come up one day, and your back shift, and you went doing training in the morning, and you were getting your lunch, and I says to you, he says, "I'm not going yet, I'm going back to Raith Rovers, Mum." I says, "What, you going back? Well, you've done your training." He says, "Aye, but there's somebody coming to see me." I says, "Jim, they're only taking their eyes at you." I said, "Because this is hunting out."
Leis yn adda fy sia y grym hewnde Baxter adda gyfi tŵgal Chichtalan agus Cwchbalan y sio ag Ibrox. Chafig fata gys y begenia mydd bilen chan an y fain bal cosio na halapa ach bilen bal cosio yn tŵr gilydd.
Baxter, this elegant footballer.
With Jim Baxter in the Coon and the Rangers is on Shach Gio Gile Mila no, the same as smooth on Clichidad and an Alapec and Am. Acharon glosset for Balapec, Casola Chevalavod, each of Furistiga.
I think it's easy to forget how, in a way, isolated Fife was back in the 1950s. We didn't have the road bridges. It was an effort to come to Fife, and it was an effort to get out of Fife. So it was a community where people did know each other. You know, you had the teams, Dunfermline, Rovers, East Fife, Cowdenbeath, and everybody knew everybody. Everybody still knows everybody, actually. But it was that very strong sense of understanding who you could trust and who was definitely not to be trusted.
Van Tukal Chordal sin na huad an five is misneach gehorst the Jim a vig mar farsje verse fatave.
First time I met Jimmy Baxter, the Rangers bus drove into Stark Park, Raith Rovers, whom Jimmy played with. And he was on a motorbike. He nearly knocked me down. He came in that fast. That was the start of Jimmy.
The first day I ever met Jim Baxter, my train was late. So when I got to Ibrox, I'd missed the running part of the training. And I ended up with Bobby Shearer, Eric Caldo, Billy Ritchie, Norrie Martin, taking goal kicks. And I was doing this for about 10-15 minutes when Jim Baxter appeared, and he says to me, are you the wee boy from Carden Den? I says, yes. I says, my name's Billy Johnson. He says, well son, you better come with me because you'll learn for them.
Summing up the whole situation. There it goes to Greg. Johnson scores! Fantastic!
As Joey Grishtochkerchi Hoshik Baxter a fast clechtje die doyen of Alavod.
When he came to Glasgow, all of a sudden he just changed. He knew how good he was. I think that, you know, belief that had been planted by Scott Simon that you are going to be the guy who will take Rangers to the next level. You're the guy I'll build my team round. It just gave him that extra dimension to sort of blow away any doubt that he may have had and just give him this self-belief that no one else had in the Scottish game at that time.
When you come from Cowdenbeath and you go with the lads down to the Pally on a Saturday and you're struggling to get a bird and you come through to Glasgow and the next minute they're throwing themselves at you. It's a wee bit kind of hard to resist, to walk away from, you know.
Get the va braka leid have moich va farant in yen weg ger Jim gawn te wisnich nor gunnik het eklich genoi Fiorentina at Ibrox and a drifiket ze hun.
When you come out first, you're standing, and I said that turned into your dad. I said, what a shame. It doesn't give what to do with his hands. I says, they're standing there and they're leaving to talk to him. And Big Harold come over and spoke to you. So, and you went to me with Big Harold.
So was it look like a wee boy lost, was it?
Oh, aye.
I wouldn't be a wee boy lost when the game started,
No, you played well. And we were all saying, Ron Baxter named the king for Weaver. You kind of we were that proud.
That was good, man.
Davis intercepting, blocking it. There's Greg. Greg playing very strongly this sort of day is a thing that suits a big, tall, tumbling, powerful lad like him. There's Baxter. Baxter to Wilson. Wilson completely dummies Thompson. A chance for Greg. Brilliant save by Harriott. Here comes Henderson.
A Charogi misneach se byd Jim Baxter yn yr chwichiaig Wembley and the drifiket se tri yn blashen ag ag stata for it.
I was fortunate enough to be playing that day. The game had only started 5 minutes. And Bobby Smith, who was centre forward with Tottenham, had a terrible tackle on Eric Calder. And unfortunately, Eric broke his leg, you know. Maybe 20 minutes into the game, I went into the penalty box and there was a guy, Ron Flowers, who was playing with Wolves, hit me a terrible tackle. It was a penalty kick.
Penalty, yes, given away by Flowers.
And I don't know that we had even arranged who was taking the penalties. I really don't know that had been worked out. But anyway...
And it looks as if Baxter's going to take it.
Baxter's wanting the penalty. Baxter's wanting the ball.
My heart was in my mouth because I knew he'd never taken a penalty kick before.
100,000 people there. Pressure's enormous. Gordon Banks is in goals, the World Cup goalkeeper. Jimmy just put the ball in the spot and nonchalantly stuck it away with his left foot.
And he scored their second.
He murdered England that day.
2-0, Scotland lead.
Absolutely murdered them.
I scored 2 goals. I'd never scored 2 goals in my life. That was dream stuff.
Agus fa cúsin I cheartfud du luchas on Pat Creran ag Celtic yn yr achai nwy Baxter ag Ibrox.
There goes Creran, very strongly, helter-skelter for goal. Bustling away, claims for a penalty kick, yes.
We got a penalty, there was only about 4 minutes to go or something like that. And Jimmy came up and started fiddling about with the ball in the penalty spot and we had a few rude words to each other. He was laughing. The goalkeeper saved it, went straight up the Park Rangers and scored and won 1-0. Now, I had to go home after that game. Very, very difficult. But Jimmy, he was just one of these great characters in life that nothing bothered him.
Get the vas sommelten en nater, va Baxter doen en een keer I punnik, geschach gare tjenu Celtic.
Henderson edging it forward. Mackay appeared to be holding on to him, but the referee allows the advantage, and the ball tumbling into goal.
When we were playing against Celtic, we wanted to beat Celtic in a big way. Why? Well, one, the bonus was always higher for beating Celtic, and the other side is that, you know, you had family, they had to go to work on the Monday, so you were really up for beating the Celtic from that point of view.
Va bunnig kutramach a cha bawn ag prís bích, agus hoog Baxter cartas maranach, the kutchen a clicketa than Celtic.
A lot of them played in the Scotland team together and they became good pals. And on the park they weren't good pals, but once the game finished, that was it. That was your job done. You went out and had a drink. That's how Jim liked it.
Jim Baxter had nothing to do with religion. He wasn't interested. It didn't bother him in the slightest. I mean, he was born and brought up Church of Scotland, but he wasn't interested in the religious divide in Glasgow, and that's why he was friendly with the likes of Creran and McNeil and people like that, and Celtic players, because it didn't really interest him in any shape or form. He just liked a person for who they were and enjoyed their company.
Va fuse Bob Kelly ag Celtic, Messele Baxter Kuchach.
I remember playing for Scotland, one of the internationals, and Bob Kelly was the top man in Scottish football at that time. And coming out of the bath, he's got a towel and they started rubbing Jimmy down. Maybe he fancied trying to sign him, I don't know.
Enyama like either club is náisianta huad Baxter chiad choramas an alapa na ravatjidach nuimplan giag agus has the cluchis on Raith Rovers. Chaya hug le Matt Busby is on train a call of the squad náisianta ag Turnberry. Mar yen a Turnberry tots mar avora, gaf Baxter lán vrad a choram, ach va nu de sar ag an a lén in a halapa has the hien. Rajedig trifikis a kead wat driach Baxter at al vunnert genert, let duas and league, kuchpa and league, agus kuchpa na halapa ulla eden tokal an a lén yed les sadavach alas on Rangers. Chudú clach eile de charn ag yn ydych enyamach gan a skip a hucht yn tŵl, y cordach yw ciad bliana ti chwmant bal cosha hasing. Ach a sgloch ydy holas an a game at the Rangers is Rapid Vienna an yn cwchpan y hiorpa, game nach bachor a fydd a chwychistocha.
Cleared the snow off the park and that, but no, in these days, you meant you would be staying another night and play the next afternoon and that, they just wanted it out of the way.
Sy chiad game ag Ibrox va Baxter a cliche 4 va smach ag yn dar a game cwtioch chyn y minach yn mygedig.
I remember it like it was yesterday. We were winning easy and it was in the 89th minute and he's got the ball and I shout, "Give me it, Jimmy, and I'll hit the byline." And he says, "No, I want to get nutmeg this big," I think it was an Austrian,
he'd put it through his legs, and he came back and put it through his legs again, and then the boy just, and you could hear it.
And he came and he whacked him. Oh, he whacked him. And I knew it was broken. You could hear the crack.
I think you'd be the first to say that he ever got over that broken leg. That was a bad, bad injury at that time. I mean, he was really at the peak of his career, and it was a bad blow. It was a bad blow for Rangers as well, and the fans, you know.
Well, he was such a big player for the club, and at that time, 64, 65, whenever, you were going to miss him for most of the season after that, and he was just a big loss to the club, to the team, because there was nobody there who was going to be the player that Jimmy was on the park.
He got the ball and doing keepy uppies, and with his left foot that was a wand.
Everybody says that he couldn't have kicked with his right foot, but he could, and he could put his foot in and tackle.
He had no right foot, mind you. He had a left foot, but he could do wonders.
He wasn't super fit, but when he had the ball, he could anything. He could make the ball talk.
En jammer de faad kva Jim chars voor aanjichtje het vallen van een roen vliegje, gaan aan de vaanjes aan een goedje versen, ach kutjoch van een kollewek en een peper neer kinnetel, le teich voor allen herren.
Hello. Oh, you're right, Jimmy. How's it going?
The Evening Citizen, whom my dad was working for at that time, were looking for a Rangers columnist. They had Charlie Tully of Celtic, and they were thinking about Eric Caldo. But my dad said, well, what about Jim Baxter? He's the new kid in the block, you know, he's the bright spark of Scottish football, let's go with him. And Jim signed up, and he never missed a column. He was always on time, even after he was conscripted, you know, under national service, and he was based in Stirling. He would always phone my dad on time, talk about the next game and get the column done, which was great. I mean, a wee bit different from his later years when he was maybe not quite so reliable.
See it now, Jimmy. Jim Baxter's Show. That's what I'm going to call it. That's going to be the title of the column right there.
Ganyan je vinach lichitad enyamel on Rangers, ha Jim Baxter gedem is on shidavish nashente. Agus chada shecha davliana an a siach ganasach. That's van a race match na freikitchen thua a Castle Relay, ba kuchach geklichis on Rangers. Agus is on skipper ball caution a race match.
Jim Baxter became a national serviceman on the 28th of October 1961. That's when his period of basic training was finished. We know from our records that Jim Baxter actually served his time in the orderly room of the depot, which means that he was in charge of, well, not in charge, sorry, he was working with people who were in charge of just looking after the barracks, looking after the depot, making sure that everything was clean, tidy, polished, etc. But being a star that he was also strongly involved in the football team, the depot football team.
He was one of the last conscripts, and the suggestion was that the brigadier wanted a top football team that could compete with any other of the forces football teams. So Baxter was the guy he wanted. It was almost the same principle applied by Scott Simon to the Black Watch brigadier that got him on board.
Nandra Kewn lap de Jim a tuchjim lan again a sanamiche, havagaki the Golganaram.
My age group was the last conscript. I was 29th of September is my birthday. If I'd been born on the 1st of October, I'd have missed out. So that's 2 days, got me this 2 years in the army.
Van a vast cheek, maar klichted na Stjachaganaram, and a huyeth Chicharamak Jim, Braga, Lid Nicudison, nor the Van Agriach Gillis a Hashjal.
There is a comment in the Regimental magazine that Jim Baxter has rung up very large phone bills using the regimental phone, calling not just family and friends but also football agencies in Glasgow.
Hi, how you doing, mate?
I used to get phone calls at all times of the night from Jimmy doing his national service. I'm on duty. Well, why are you on the bloody phone then if you're on duty? Phoned me nearly every night. It drove me absolutely mad. He was absolutely bored, that's why he would be probably on guard duty, guarding against who.
Gan chwys the Ian mar yard at Castell Relay, hannig Shillivish Nation to Jim Baxter gecawn le tourist bal koshe shach ganyan yan archinyer. Haro an topic of this human the sulach who come against the real chinashin as more.
Yep, everything's paid for, but there's no to be any bills signed and there's no phone calls home. And after the meeting, he said, I don't suppose you'll take much notice of that, Baxter.
Get the hard Jim Baxter as a Shillivish Nation that you can chlit, can your chicken a chisuya chaganasach van a clutje and da chutjes and Rangers, agus gan race match.
Just bizarre to think that someone, Rangers broke the Scottish transfer record financially to sign him, that someone with such a value to a football club and the insurances that might have been required to go with that was allowed to play football effectively in an amateur arena and the same week turn out in a full house 100,000 crowd to ply his trade. It's just a very strange phenomenon.
Idashag Rangers va Vishnach Kutrimach and a vi sochtrach Frinnesach and Gluchit at the Nilla.
First cup final at Hampden, and we were playing Celtic, and I was a bag of nerves, so I'm having a fag, I smoke, and he came down, and I'm saying, Jimmy, I'm shitting myself here, I'm a right bag of nerves.
And this was a really big game. I was exceptionally nervous. And he says, come on, we'll get on to the park, he says.
He says, look, just treat it as a practice game. Just think you're at the Albion playing in a practice match against the reserve team.
I remember we got up to the penalty box and he stood at the penalty spot, and he says to me,
I'm the captain. If it's nothing each, with a minute to go, and we get a penalty kick,
I'm going to take it. And he says, see me, you see me putting the ball on the spot.
You go up and get the cup. And that's how he was.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Get the Jim Baxter a tarring the string and then the fact, as a kuchach doos in the hood again a fissachke, Vadach nach Rashin Danjach, Sanedic at the Vafine na Forke. Men of Ven, Haila Ui, Yalich at the club, agus Hokaid, a Hassing.
I didn't want to leave Rangers, but I was just getting married at that time and I needed a few quid anyway, and I was getting it from Sunderland. Rangers weren't going to give me it anyway.
When it came to salaries, Baxter wanted a heavier payday than any of his teammates, and Scott Simon again indulged his favourite player at that time every which way that it was possible, and again it fractured the relationship between Board and Scott Simon. And ultimately when he was sold, if you see some of the old pictures from that day when he put pen to paper in 1965 to leave Rangers for Sunderland, I swear there's a tear in Scott Simon's eye.
Na the gadig is Jim unta in the Rangers with a unigid more and good glosha ka Sunderland. Had a tatagu like Neil Martin a chlich Conlish son Alapa agus Sunderland and there a noch a Groker Park.
I'd put a bit of weight on. When I got on the team bus, we got my first game at Sheffield Wednesday, and I was sitting in the team bus when Baxter came on, and I went, Jesus, where does he get that belly? He was massive, like, you know, and I mean he was built like me, but I can see why he never done any training, like, you know, down there.
Hick Baxter Gamal Lua Gerwaid Meraki and Rangers Akal.
Really, Sunderland were a bad side. They were a bad team. It was sort of like going back to Raith. It was starting with Raith Rovers again.
He was easily bored. He was living in a hotel. He found distractions easy to come by. They then signed his cousin, George Mulhall, who'd been playing with Stoke, I think, at the time. And that's all they needed was double bubble. It was double trouble, effectively, at that time. And when the two of them got together, they literally, you know, ran amok.
Bashan Vanage and Halapa Ian McCall and is just killing the Black Cats. I was her own car to set it in Gish, a cord that is no click to the Nilla.
You could send straight away the players didn't like him. And because he was a pal of the managers, Ian would be having a laugh with him. So it didn't go down well, like, you know.
Did he want to go to Sunderland? I don't think so. But he certainly wanted paid a lot more money than he was getting at Glasgow Rangers.
As during a slew in a Kiat game, glúis Jim go Nottingham Forest, cogan a gile hit you get ash gagonig.
I was a disaster with Nottingham. I really was. I never kicked one ball.
That Jim rachrua yet heen, a Raith Brian Clough, be Baxter fagan a clicketa than a bear a chlich Conladish.
Ready with a free kick to Baxter. This is number 6, Jim Baxter.
Agus be cúteach an clicketa the riap sassing as a chéal like Wembley and a drifichas the shaft.
If you're playing at Wembley and you're playing keep you up in the middle of the park and asking a World Cup winner, Alan Ball, for to come and get the ball off you, it takes some bottle.
We, Billy and I, in big time gamble, we wanted to take the piss. That was what we wanted.
When he was keeping the ball up, which annoyed me, because I wanted to get more goals and give him back what he had given us a couple of years before.
But Dennis was furious at us. Dennis was saying, you know how he talks, like, you know, and hey, it's all right for you, don't pound the 9-3 game.
Jim was like individual keeping the ball up and all that, and that was Baxter. He was showing to the world what a player he was, yeah.
Dennis was right. I felt we could have went up and scored any time. That's how much we were on top. I mean, the score ended up 3-2, but we were so much on top, it was unbelievable.
Hij skippen na halapis Ferella Helobith, Scott Brown, hook alle kleinjen skialach in Baxter, sa gatjach gur shinne dienchen heen and a chlicha Wembley.
I think the thing that came into my mind more than anything was don't try keep you up, Scott, because it could go totally wrong. He was a legend out and he had a lot of skill, a lot of flair, pace as well, and I'm pretty much everything he wasn't.
As Joey fydd ymach gan ysgip y hwchtyn tŵl an 3-3 da Baxter Uadilla an yn company lead Eusebio, Di Stefano agus Pushkas da blian as Joysyn is on game dwys Stanley Matthews. Yn tyr sio, be Baxter y Ferreiro a Dwle Bryn.
And here come the two teams. Di Stefano leading the World 11, George Cohen, number 2 in the striped shirts, leading the Stanley Matthews 11. And I've worked it out that there's well over £1 million worth of footballing talent here tonight. I should say it's getting on to a good £1.5 million.
It was Stanley Matthews' 50th birthday, and had the rest of the world a select playing an English 11, and no Stanley was playing.
Just before we were due to go on the bus, we were in the foyer of the hotel in Stoke. Now, two of the greatest players in the world, it was Puskás and Di Stefano. Jimmy says to me, "Wee man, going on to the bus, get a couple of good seats." I said, "What are you going to do?" He said, "I need to wait here," he says. Puskás and Di Stefano want my autograph. That was Jimmy. That was Jimmy.
Should old acquaintance be?
Can je vain gur a ferring Pushkas a geary laugh screeving, va shidduch campanus Jim Baxter kuchach.
The first words he said to Dennis and I can remember it when we met him in the hotel down at...
This is Dennis Law.
Dennis Law, we got pricked for the rest of the world. Fisky, the jiggy, Jimmy Dennis. But I ended up in Drumchapel on the scullery floor, Puskás, with this young lady. Now, Drumchapel, I told the boy to put a plaque up saying that Puskás scored here.
As Joe je verach gereine le vi dolke Nottingham Forest, heel Jim chan a club na chroeddi of Sonakal, Rangers.
He still had touch. I recall when he signed back for Rangers here, and you know, after he spell at Nottingham Forest where he'd been released on a free transfer, he came back. He was the size of a house, but his touch was still exquisite. He had a left foot that had Velcro already built in, but he just had no mobility. And part of that was going back to the 63 leg break in Vienna.
He wasn't the same Jimmy Baxter when he came back. No, he wasn't.
As soon as he came back, he made promises that he was a reformed character, that he would deliver on the field, that he had made some mistakes south of the border. The day he signed, he was arrested for drink driving.
But it's my hobby for 35 years. That was my hobby, getting drunk.
Gee, ain't it funny how time slips away?
Sydafchel sgyroi fa cae be Jim Baxter farnapathje gesonrich na va gol y kielach gyda na digriach gycawn ac ywys gyma og.
Well, hello there.
See, I'm 28, 29, when I should have been fit as anything. But when I needed to, I knew I'd lost that wee bit. And I knew I had to, it wasn't there.
I think you have to be a very particular kind of person to resist the pressures of sudden wealth and sudden fame and the accessibility of all the other things that you might have dreamed of growing up, but you never really believed you were going to have within your grasp. And I think it's very difficult when you're, in your late teens and your early 20s, and suddenly all of this is at your feet. How do you say no to it?
I made a faux pas. The thing, as I said, I didn't play well, and I really wasn't fit, and I let myself down a bit, and the fans, and also I let Davy White down.
Gyda fa Jim Baxter anich Jim ar character Evin Giar, a persa gyma tain jadon yet cool shin kujach.
Jimmy wasn't easy to get to. You know, it was sort of fairly deep at times.
He said, because I play football, people are expecting a lot from me, and I should be a good person, a great. He said, I mean, I'm not. I want people to know me, what's and all, and still like me. He thought that people really just liked him because he was Jim Baxter, footballer, whereas he would just have liked them to like him because he was Jim Baxter.
Gynnes fuse gan y carriage yn y bydlwyga, fa Jim Baxter y clay rŵn giaf ar tiwlich. Fa fad edd hort siachat yn yr afana fastia.
When I met his sister, she told me how her mother had fallen pregnant while in war years were just about to kick in 1939. The natural father was going to the Air Force, and before the age of 6 months, her mother had given her firstborn away to her stepbrother and his wife, who couldn't have children.
As jo je mach gehort siachat de salje kuchim vo tiwlich, giach math Jim the ein adash, ach gadich ora.
They tried to get him back, and by all accounts they refused to give him up. So there was a family with a wedge driven deeply in between two parts of the family. His adopted mother and father ring-fenced him and gave him everything he could ever have wanted.
And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
I mean, he just adored them. Yeah. He just absolutely loved them and showed his feelings for them. I was just a little lady, but as soon as Jim, mum, hug her, kiss her, well, he just loved, and he called him his wee dad. Rab was his wee dad, and he just adored them.
Get nach rafisa gyda sgialach gilead gys yn roes na lichatan, that Jim moch al yen anoch fachgach va u jog, nor va balachele se vale a fanagid.
Jim found out for the first time when he was early teens, when playing a game in the street, other neighbours and locals knew the story that Jim Baxter had been given away as a baby, effectively. And he then got wind of this, asked the question, but like everything else, it was played down. And a lot of people in families, at that time, didn't publicly air their dirty washing.
Han ik nu leiding mach en er gunnig Jim agus Norma the Sean Vorenach un la estrach an the Cowden Beath.
She said to Jim, "You're not saying hello to your mother," and Jim was quite taken aback because, as far as he was concerned, Ag was his only mother. We went into a local place and had a cup of tea, and she told me the story of what had happened. You can imagine, having a child to this boy that was in the village, just a young boy. Her parents were really angry, told her she wasn't to see him again, and she wasn't to keep the baby. She wasn't to get close to him. She just wasn't to have him.
Fós maad agus aad Jim agus va túl chloine ilach gus Jewishin, braden is perichin id nach dueth Jim Eolas yn yr yfad y ffasuas.
He was devastated, especially when he heard the full story, because he could never understand why he was rejected. He thought she just didn't want him as a child, and he couldn't understand why she would have these other children and not want him. And so when he heard the story, he was really very emotional about it. We were driving back and he had to stop the car until lay-by, and it really quite broke his heart. And I had to drive back. He said, I can't drive, you drive the rest of the way. So it did affect him. I feel maybe if he had known the full story from when he was young, he might have been quite different, in his maybe attitude to women. I think he always maybe felt that rejection.
It made this complex character even more so, and it made him take the style of life that he adopted of live for today and be damned for tomorrow.
Who's the best football player among you?
Me.
Who? What position do you play?
I play up forward.
You score all the goals?
You can David Cooper.
David Cooper, I know David Cooper well, aye.
A Jim manish go komen ke you me gaan bear, skroit ors droch voe the lanje.
Although he wasn't an alcoholic, as was confirmed by his surgeon when he had the liver transplant, he confirmed that there was no absolute condition that confirmed that he was alcohol reliant in any shape or form. He was a social animal, and once he got in company, and particularly when you started talking football, the clock was absolutely irrelevant. But for me, I don't doubt he managed to blank off any of the part of his life that he was less than comfortable with, and perhaps drink gave him an avenue to help forget.
I ganyan y triplet yn percentake va Jim McGeary I vech y ddashan an ortu. Is an grush va henus Jimmy Johnson at all chwrs je feg vrichting le Bob Smith na haya.
The two guys were rehearsing regularly with one another, and many a time Baxter would say, "You can't say that, wee man. Come on, you need to just slow it down, put a bit more, get rid of the Glasgow accent. Now that's great. Coming for a fifer, Ken, the way he talks as quick as that." Yeah, they were wayward at certain times, but other folk would just put it down to being cheeky wee boys, and they never actually came out of that. They were cheeky wee boys, whoever we were with, but they had respect, and that was the important thing.
Ach wat dolle maag stries ach Baxter het jenne mielige de laantje, ag is renunge te keer van grue en ake falige.
Liver failure is one of the worst illnesses of all, because patients feel very ill. Renal disease and liver disease, patients look ill and they feel awful, for want of a better word. But Jim would never complain about that.
Get nach de goprige theater van dara urp sedevachel, agus va Jim Baxter tolletje gur a corramilake.
It's a lifesaver, and I really appreciate it. Fantastic.
After his transplant, and he thought that he was a better person, not because he'd had a transplant, but because he felt that whoever it was that had donated the liver to him was a good guy. He said, "I am actually a better person inside, for that transplant."
Tangele ve eine dash, hound Jim fuse a laugh pick and klissach.
He did a couple of things for television. It's just these walk-on, what do you call them, a cameo bits. And one where there's two young footballers and they're in a fish shop, and they want to get on at football, and they've just eaten a fish supper, and when they come out, one of them says, "I always want to play at Jim Baxter," and Jim's passing, and they roll up the paper and throw it, and Jim kicks it. So that was the cameo bit.
No bad, eh?
So we practiced that in the house so much. It was really funny. Now, should I do this? Or will I do that? You know.
Van súl ma, sópar agus falain, that Jim Miss Norma could dói la bech gychyd a chor yen bech o siachad cálau. Gys yn dŵad at ffyr gyroch neach, va eilse nach ga glees, it's Jim Baxter.
When James Garden told us, he told both of us, the first day, I mean, you can imagine, we were both really, you know, well, really crying, both of us. And then after we did that, Jim said, right, no more crying, that's it. I'm going to do a deal with the newspapers and give them the last testament of Jim Baxter. So he wanted out the hospital then right away. Don't want to, you know, want to go home now. Let's get the bag, let's get home. And when we do go home, want everything is normal, no crying, want everything to stay the same and be positive.
Ma chanw neach o dŵch va dwlich ganw yn y basgyd y fi chymysnichal.
I remember him just shortly before he died, he phoned me up here in Manchester. And he said, I've got a bit of bad news for you and a bit of good news for you. I said, well, what's the bad news? I've got 4 months to live. I thought, my God almighty. And he said, the nurses told me I can start drinking again. Can you believe that? He was laughing at it. And I'm nearly in tears with this conversation we're having. That was just, he was such a great lad and wandered through life.
End of the world at the time, yeah.
At sy fa Norma gysoch gyda cydydoi sydd efo chielaki is on gŵl y cria, fa Jim y genw na planich yn ag hen.
I remember I got a phone call. He really wasn't well. He was in the hospital at this time. He says, wee man. I says, hello Stanley, how you doing? You used to call him Stanley, you know. So what can I do for you? He says, I want you to be one of the bearers in my coffin. Wow. Unbelievable. And I think, when I think back now, I feel quite proud that Jimmy thought that much of me. And probably, I never ever realised it till then, what he thought of me.
That must have been a difficult conversation.
Very. Very, very difficult. Took me a wee while to go over that one. Took me a wee while to go over that. And I used to go and see him in the hospital, you know. And that was tough. Tough.
Ro erach va Jim Baxter y chyn gydydig y lia. Chwyd a siachat na hwyd yn mygydig conlodd I hewlach gwlach. Va wajyd chyn yn gydig.
I thought he was just amazingly brave. There was only once he said, you know something, I'm scared. And I said to him, this is one time I can't go with you, Jim. I can't do this journey. This is one journey you've got to go on your own. And it was at the very end. Well, my daughter was with me, and I was sitting on the bed with Jim, and she said that he knew you were there, Mum. Every time you touched him, he relaxed.
Ydy chero la diolch yn y ypling da filis hwn, je can dinje eendach sio a FIFA na gachi an y Glasgow. Ein chyrfys chielach I chwmal an y cadig le chevala.
In those 2 years, Jim Baxter owned Wembley.
The English just had their name in the lease. Jim's feet weren't made of clay, they were made of pure gold. And the left one was probably inlaid with diamonds as well. But the rest of Jim, that was definitely clay. He came from Hillabeath, and don't you forget it, because he never did. He was also a man of, I think you'll know this, a man of terrible niggling arguments. I mean, I actually sometimes think Jim probably puts his head in the mirror in the morning. He could fall out with anybody. But along with that, when it came to the big things, for me, he was a man of true generosity of spirit. If he spoke about Norma, it was essentially to say he couldn't believe Norma, having been with him for so many years, how she'd put up with him. He had that marvellous ability, it seems to be, where things matter, to give generously to others and not keep for himself.
Fantastic turnout, which you would expect, and Jimmy would have been pleased that there was people locked out the church, and and he's probably up there enjoying himself and thinking back. He'll be thinking, maybe I should have done this and maybe I should have done that. But at the end of the day, I don't think he had too many regrets.
Ba un soddi slán magiriach Jim Baxter eid fli magiriach I siachat at Ibrox, far by a chlw zenyam iddo chud yn cael gybrach.
I would have summed him up. Well, I think Jimmy would look at himself in as much as that he just wanted to play football. He'd been down the pit, and the change in his life, to come up the pit and sign for Glasgow Rangers, be such a star for his country, Scotland. I think Jimmy, when he looked back, would reflect on all the positive things, all the good things, all the good things he'd done in football.
I thought he was really number one in the list. He was the tops, really.
I think he was the making of a team that we had in the 60s. Jimmy made you play with the way he played. He made you want to win. He loved to win.
Damn near the top. Has to be. Has to be, you know.
Honestly, Jim Baxter was one of the best football players in the world.
He would still be a phenomenal player in today's football.
He wasn't just a huge talent. He wasn't just somebody who could do the business on the field. He was somebody who brought a sense of entertainment. He brought a smile to your face. Even now you look at that sort of grainy old footage from Wembley, and you can't watch that without having a smile on your face. And so I think whenever somebody like that goes out of our lives, you kind of forgive them anything else they might have done because of the joy they've brought.